This is Aner Dyfan teaches From the Depths basic aeroplane utilising roll to turn. So to begin with, have a basic plane here. So it's not exactly a very functional shape, but it's the sort of styling roughly which you may come across. So has a strong core there, engine roughly centrally, and then wings on either side, from which weapons and such could be assembled. So first of all, what needs to be done is the primary thrust needs to be added, and this needs to be done in line with the centre of mass. So what will happen if I place the jet engine down here, as the thrust pushes along here, it will create a moment of inertia around the centre of mass, pushing the nose up. And if I placed it on the top here, it would again create a torque around the centre of mass, pushing the nose down. So ideally, I want to have the thrust in exactly the centre, in line with the centre of mass. And for the large jet engines, that is the central block of the 9. So just place that there, like so. That will provide the primary thrust. For staying up in the air, there are a couple of options. The first is utilising the wings, which increase actual lift as you go up. So these will need to be, again, in line with the centre of mass, like so. And these will hopefully provide enough lift to keep my ship airborne. So I'll actually place an AI core down, a mainframe, like so, and then a card slot with an aerial AI. This will now activate the engine, and I should go up. As it increases, the lift is unfortunately not sufficient to keep my ship airborne. So let us try a couple more engines, see if we can get the speed up to provide enough lift. And no, this heavy metal block is a little bit too heavy. Unfortunately, the way I have designed this craft, the wings are not really able to provide enough lift on their own. So I'm actually just going to delete those and go on to the second method of keeping my ship airborne, and that is adding a pitch thruster at the front. I probably don't need a huge one, just a couple of these smaller ones will do. So these actually keep the nose up in the air, like so. Though if it's going a little bit too high, I would like a couple on the top just to correct it down to even the flight out, like so. So it is now actually a functional plane, which is nice. Fortunately, if I give my plane a control, nothing happens. That's because it has no control surfaces whatsoever. And I would like to now utilise roll to turn. So for roll to turn, we can use ailerons. Just going to place these here. These don't provide any lift on their own, but they will actually add roll components. So as you can see, the ship is now rolling to try and get to its mark. Unfortunately, it's flying a little bit low at the moment to really utilise that feature. What I'm going to do, I'm going to raise all these altitudes to really try and make it fly higher in the air, because at the moment it's flying far too low and ends up just crashing straight into the ocean. And in fact, I don't believe I have enough pitch control, so I'm going to add a couple of jet engines at the back, set these to thrust reverse, and similarly for on this side as well, set to thrust to reverse. This will give a much stronger amount of pitch control for this plane. Still not quite enough though. So next option is to place a huge jet engine and set it for main. This means that this will be used for maintaining the altitude of this plane, and there we go, it's pushing it up into the sky. And so now I can work on making this turn. So go back to the ailerons, set in the correct orientation, in line with the centre of mass. There we go, ship's rolling, and then it will begin pulling it up to turn towards its target. Unfortunately, it's still turning a little bit too much, and nose nose bombing down. So unfortunately, the plane is actually trying to still nose bomb under the water when it's trying to turn. It's actually turning a little bit too much. I'm just going to take this down to a 90. So this should prevent it from going over too far over on its side when it makes a turn. So there we go, it's making a turn, but there's no actual side thrusters, which means it loses altitude very readily. So I would actually probably like to reduce this down to around about 80. Pitch, so it's there. Still going a little bit too far, and so nosing down into the water. I think part of this is that the ailerons are not actually strong enough. So an alternative to ailerons, it is possible to use jet engines. So set these up as thrusters. So set this one to roll left hand side, this one up as right hand side, and then do similarly for the top as well, right hand side and left hand side. So now when I remove caps lock, see it's turning considerably faster, which allows it to make its motion and then begin to correct itself before it falls into the water. That makes it much better for turning. As you can see again, it turns round, staying not all the way there, but it doesn't drop anywhere near as much as just with those ailerons. Probably because I wasn't adding enough ailerons onto the system. This though is now a fully functional aircraft. It's just not armed, and it does have a little bit tendency to want to dive into the water. That's just because I haven't quite figured out all the settings for this particular aircraft. All the settings on here just need to be tweaked a little bit to ensure the best flight for your particular plane. So I could always add some other thrusters on the side here just to help it from falling into the water. So this thrusters here help keep the nose down when it's turning, and then when it gets a little bit too low, the other one will fire, preventing it from falling into the water. So there are a number of ways in which it can be adjusted to create a more stable flight pattern or a more useful flight pattern. If you make your flight pattern too stable, it makes you very easy to target and shoot down with AA guns. In fact, in this case, if I add a huge jet engine, this will help my roll to turn quite considerably. As you can see there, roll to turn pushes a lot faster than it was previously, making this turn very, very tight. It does have a tendency to push me up right into the sky though. If your ship does fly too high, using the roll to turn, it can actually enter space and the jet engines will turn off because they have not enough atmosphere to function. Ways this can be counteracted are make it so that your ship generally flies lower, unlike this one, or you can always change a few of the jet engines into ion thrusters so that when it does go into space, it has a little bit of thrust to turn itself down and get back down into Nita's atmosphere. So a practical example of this roll to turn is this little drone I made for the Christmas campaign. So you can see here I've set the roll left and right hand side on here, and then I've set actual thrusters top and bottom here. And this has a very, very unstable flight pattern. As you can see, you're probably getting a little bit seasick. So I'm just going to unconnect from that. What this flight pattern means though is that it constantly seems to be changing direction, which makes it a lot harder to aim at for a lot of weapon systems. Missiles can just fly straight behind it and go in, but if I make this spin tightly when it's targeting its enemies, it means that missiles will have a difficulty turning after it, because this turns very, very quickly because it is so lightweight and its power to weight ratio is ridiculously high. This, I believe, is an advantage of the roll to turn over the yaw to turn builds, is that the yaw to turn are often a lot more stable, which makes them easier to hit with anti-aircraft fire. But a more stable platform is generally easier to work with, and you don't have to worry so much about them falling into the water when they take a small amount of damage. Any damage dealt to this will basically destroy it. Either it hits the vital components at the front, or if it hits the rear, it will destabilize it and it will just spiral out of control and crash into the sea. That, though, is about all there is to light aircraft utilizing roll to turn. As you can see, it's not too difficult and not that much different to the yaw to turn. Hopefully you found this useful and you'll continue watching. Until next time, bye!